level of connectivity. The foundation of successful tech companies is high-speed networks. And that's why it's so important for us to stop for a moment before we embark on this journey of looking at companies. Take a look at what the city of Adelaide has done to foster innovation with the 10 gig network. I'm sure you've heard of it. If you're not familiar with the particulars of this 10 gig network, I'm very happy to tell you that our next speaker is here to share all about that topic with you. We see this as a foundational element to the future success of Adelaide-based businesses. High-speed, low-latency networking at an affordable cost for innovative companies. Our next speaker was chosen as the Chief Information Officer of the Year in 2017 by CEO Magazine. He is Peter Auhl. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage. Peter.
Good morning, everyone. I feel like a principal. I'm Pete. I'm from Adelaide. I originally come from the country, though. I'm in a little town in the southeast of South Australia called Narracourt. We grew up on a farm, and on that farm, we didn't have a Bunnings next door. We had to actually innovate. We had to actually think laterally. We had to think about how we solve problems differently, and I think that experience as a child has really helped me craft innovations throughout my career and start to reposition Adelaide's future. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about what we've been doing at the City of Adelaide over the last period of time. It was interesting hearing people talking about solving problems, and I think that's the essence of what we've tried to achieve. And our journey and our digital strategy actually started from a customer journey experience. What could we do if we started actually changing the experience, focusing back on customers and customer outcomes? And we used an artefact called Claire's story. Some of you may have seen me present this story 3 years ago. And what it really is looking at ways that we can make the connection between what the digital outcome looks like back to a customer. You know, you imagine a city that's able to have a single pane of glass that a customer can look through and see what services are important to her. You know, what the business conditions or the economic conditions are like so that she can make a better decision from afar to actually choose Adelaide as a destination of choice to start a business. To get a reminder when their car park's about to expire. You know, these sorts of things, really talking to the experience of our city. It's fine to have infrastructure, but you've got to have the experience that supports the infrastructure as well. So solving problems is a really critical part of our journey. You know, being able to tell people what's going on, reward them for actually using their networks to actually tell other people about what's going on. How do we increase vibrancy? Because we believe that there's a direct correlation between vibrancy and growth. Right, so again, how do we start to use technology to actually underpin the experience of our customers through the city? And then back in the organisation, how do we use this information to make better and more informed decisions? And the City of Adelaide have undertaken a journey over the last 3 years to make sure we're not just talking about this stuff, but we're actually doing it. I'm not sure if you're aware, but our Open Economics Insights platform, which is part of our suite of, I guess, open data on steroids, I'd call it. You know, how do we actually develop a toolkit of open data so people can slice and dice their own information free from anywhere in the world rather than just giving them flat files? Again, solving problems for people. Not every business has a data scientist. Not every business has a business insights team. How do we start to amplify their experience? And Adelaide's really looking at becoming a hyper-connected city. We want people to have choice. This is just not about one product. This is about a suite of different products that people can choose between, and they all solve different problems. So we're making sure that when it comes to business and business transactions through the city, everyone's got choice and what's important to them. I want to talk to you a bit about this specific project, and this specific project was born out of a problem solve. About 3.5 years ago, I spent about 3 months talking to businesses through the City of Adelaide, and one of the common themes that came up was connectivity, and it wasn't internet connectivity, ironically. It was actually the internet was part of the problem. Businesses could see when kids were getting home from school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they were trying to get to their cloud service, and they're in competition to get to their cloud service with domestic internet traffic, the likes of Netflix and YouTube. My kids, as soon as they get home, fire up YouTube, you know, and that was impeding their productivity. You know, and some of these businesses were saying at those times of the day, they could see their productivity dropping by as much as 30%. So that was a problem that we're faced to solve. Now, normally what would happen is you would go, well, let's just produce faster internet. But the internet is almost like a race to the congestion. Regardless of your speed to the internet, once you're there, it's an unmanaged network. So this project was really about how do we get as much transaction off the internet and onto these private network links that are reliable and fast, you know, and get that traffic away from that congestion and the contention of the internet. I've got a video of the launch event for 10 Gigabit Adelaide that I wanted to show you. It just shows the impact of this. We gave people 2 weeks' notice about this launch event, and the town hall was packed out with the decision makers of the city. So I just wanted to quickly share that with you.
Thanks again, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Adelaide and welcome to the magnificent Adelaide Town Hall. We have an absolutely packed house tonight, and I think that is a sign that something truly great is unfolding in the City of Adelaide. Along with our valued partner, TPG Telecom, we are excited to be launching the 10 Gigabit Adelaide network. And earlier this afternoon, I had the great honour indeed of connecting the very first client to the network, the Australian Institute of Business on Curry Street, and they have now connected to this game-changing data network. 10 Gigabit Adelaide will fundamentally change how Adelaide does business with the world. It'll help to make Adelaide become the most connected city in Australia. And 10 Gigabit Adelaide is innovation at its very best.
TPG has been building out infrastructure across this country for the last 5 years. I would like to say more than anybody. We've expanded our domestic infrastructure and our international infrastructure. And so the partnership with Adelaide really works because it leveraged some of our experience versus the desire and the vision that Adelaide Council basically had for businesses within Adelaide.
This infrastructure will help us deliver on our smart city agenda. It will help us have the plumbing that's required to transmit data, not just for today, but for our future.
As our very first client, right here at Curry Street in the City of Adelaide, we cut the ribbon and we're open for business.
So what is this project? Well, it's a big infrastructure build, okay? And we partnered with TPG Telecom last year to deliver against our commitments to bring this project to life. As you can see from this slide, the CBD is on the left-hand side, so the square mould is very well covered. The coloured lines actually represents where the fibre optic cable will be built. Just a fun fact, TPG Telecom's primary link to service all of Sydney CBD is a 2,500 strands, fibre strand link running over the Sydney Harbour Bridge. We're going to have that infrastructure rolling down every main street of the City of Adelaide. So just to give you an indication of how significant this build is going to be. Every business, and there's every building, and there's 1,000 buildings in scope of this, will have their own access to their own trunks of fibre. And into North Adelaide as well, we see this as very much an activation tool. We can start to bring people into parts of the city that they weren't before. We're starting to see vacancies in different parts of the city. How do we use this infrastructure to re-incentivise people to think about different parts of the city to start their business? So I talked about 1,000 buildings that were in scope of this, and about 3,500 businesses we see in those 1,000 buildings. So 3.5 businesses per building, 1,000 buildings, 3,500 businesses in scope of this project. Pictures tell 1,000 words. Pernix, who are a data company that actually produced this slide for us to really start to represent where we currently sit and what this infrastructure will start to do around repositioning Adelaide globally. And this is a very important part of this infrastructure. How do we reposition ourselves globally to make use of this infrastructure? So if you have a look at this slide at the top left-hand corner, you know, right next to Iran, the City of Adelaide sits as one of the most expensive and the slowest cities or jurisdictions in the world. That's obviously not good for business, and it's obviously impeding people actually thinking about coming to Adelaide, when our geography is one of the things that stops people coming from Adelaide. How do we get that out of the equation? Seoul, which is considered one of the fastest cities in the world, sits right down in the bottom centre there. Once we hit 500, and 500 only of those 3,500 businesses, the City of Adelaide will sit right out there. So double the speed of Seoul, and it's cheap. So that really tells a story about when you're thinking about setting up a business, when geography no longer matters, it's Adelaide. How do we start to use this infrastructure to get people to rethink about where they're going to start their business? I heard some of the speakers before talking about our food and wine and our festivals and all these things that are great about Adelaide. All we're missing is this sort of infrastructure to start to make a difference. I've got young kids. I'm motivated. I want them to have a chance to have a future here. It's a beautiful city. I'd love them to at least have a choice to stay. At the moment, I do a bunch of guest lecturing at the university in design thinking. I'd love people that are coming out of university to at least have a choice to actually start their career here. We believe this infrastructure is going to do this. This is really the secret sauce, and there's nothing really magical about this. It's just doing something different. Again, this infrastructure that's going to roll across the entire city, but it's designed in a different way. You remember me talking about the idea of, kids getting home from school, YouTube and Netflix, those things that, kids are using all the time now. How do we get those transactions, or how do we get those business transactions away from that congestion? So this is really about how we actually use this infrastructure in a different way. We recognise modern businesses need a myriad of different types of connections, not just the internet. All right, so this is about how do we make connections across the city. So if I was a radiographer on the south side of the city, how could I provide real-time services to a hospital precinct without touching the internet, across a private network? If I was in the movie industry, how could I collaborate with 3 or 4 other people and actually form this digital alliance across the city without touching the internet? These are the sorts of use cases we're starting to see really resonating with businesses and solving problems for them. The defence industry, how could we actually start to look at ways that we could use the investment that's coming around our defence industry and lure some of those technology companies to Adelaide? And once we've got the city connected together, that's great, but we're still sitting in South Australia, in the middle of Australia, and then connecting our entire city to cloud infrastructure through things called interconnects. Private fibre links, or actually bringing those cloud providers right close to right next to our door. How do we start to, again, get away from that congestion of the internet to make these connections into cloud infrastructure as well? And these are sort of conversations we're having at the moment with big companies looking at ways that they can bring their cloud closer to Adelaide. But of course, businesses still need internet, and we'll provide an internet product as well. Another use case is the education department. Imagine being able to have real-time, reliable video conferencing between universities and student accommodation. Again, bringing together industries together on this sort of uncongested, uncontended network, keeping away from the internet. This is very much a reliability play, not just a speed play. Speed is great, but price point's important as well. So our first customer was paying almost $9,000 a month for a 500 megabits per second business grade service. Our first customer bought a 2 gigabit service from 10 gigabit Adelaide, so they went from $9,000 a month down to $800. And their speed increased from 500 megabits per second to 2 gig. So these are the sort of use cases we're starting to see. We want connectivity to not be a part of business decisions in Adelaide. We want that to be a known. All right, and not just connectivity, but connectivity that's reliable. And to access the rest of it, in this case, we're talking about a 1 gigabit internet connection, but to access the rest of that 9 gigabits per second, we're saying that's going to be $199 for a business to connect to a business across the city. $199 for a 9 gigabit per second, no data limits, synchronous, same speed up, same speed down, $199 across the city. That's incredible. I think I'd need to give away steak knives when I actually make this talk. This is our first customer speed test. This is not 1 o'clock in the morning. This is not, when everyone's off the internet. This is an internet connection at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on 2nd of March. I've never seen anything like this. You could take away the first 3 digits of that, and that's pretty much what I get at home. All right, so this is the sort of speeds that we're starting to see from our customers. And everyone would know in this room that it's not actually the download that matters when you're actually exporting services, it's the upload. So our first customer is the Australian Institute of Business, 16,000 MBA students across the world online. All right, so internet is critical to their business success. All right, and taking away these fixed costs for businesses and actually delivering products like this is really compelling for them. And we're seeing lots of other use cases that are starting to come to fruition. Talking to groups like StreetGeek, who are a gaming company. Imagine splitting the city up so you could actually have a LAN party across the entire city. Have fun with this. So how do we start to incentivise people to do stuff that's quite different? That'd be cool. And we're already starting to see impact. We launched this project in December, and this was a very brave and bold move by our city council. Never been done before by a city. We had unanimous support from every elected member. The business case behind this is absolutely compelling. So again, a brave move to actually reposition our economy into the future. You know, we're starting to see businesses relocate to Adelaide. Datacom are moving from Findon into the CBD, bringing with them about 120 employees, a $1.2 billion company. Nexion Networks have moved their offices from Perth to Adelaide. You know, we're seeing investment coming back to the city. There's been about $300 million worth of institutional investment into Adelaide over the last couple of months alone, who have publicly stated 10 Gigabit Adelaide is one of the reasons they're actually reinvesting in Adelaide. So again, how do we start to re-energise our economy? How do we start to make sure that we're going to re-amplify our prospects economically? This is not a race with Sydney and Melbourne. This is a race, an international race now economically. So we need to make sure we almost leapfrog this. How do we start to attach our economy into Southeast Asia, into the US, wherever we need to go to make sure that we're actually, you know, getting away from having this sort of national competition. This is an international race now. Incredible success. Our 1,000 buildings we needed to secure, we gave ourselves 6 months to secure that. It was sold out in 9 weeks. So again, this is compelling. This story is compelling to businesses. People are aching for this. If you haven't seen any media about this project, you must be on a different planet. I think it's absolutely going crazy, which is fantastic. I guess the other part of this project as well is part of the negotiations. We wanted to make sure the City of Adelaide actually had the infrastructure they needed to do the things that they needed to do also. So we secured around 300 endpoints of fibre for our own use at no cost. Okay, and what we've done with that, we've sent 160 of those straight to traffic signalling boxes across the city. You know, so that's going to be a point of presence across our entire city to think, when we're starting to look at things like autonomous vehicles, or we're starting to look at things like, you know, hyper-connected smart city type activities, or we're starting to look at ways that we can integrate information together through our connected architectures, having this sort of infrastructure at the ground is going to be critical. You know, so we've got 300 endpoints of fibre splattered across the city now that we can use for our own use and actually transmit data back to us rather than having a myriad of different types of connections. How can we have one secure connection in place for the City of Adelaide to continue their smart city journey? Excuse me. I've got one more video to show and I'll just wrap up from there.
And South Australia more generally. This will be the first time a city's actually built a fibre optic network through the city in this particular way. This is not just infrastructure for infrastructure's sake. This is making sure that we're putting the connectivity in place that businesses are aching for. They can see the opportunities for them. They can see how this is going to benefit their business.
Buddy is a technology company and internet connectivity is absolutely the lifeblood of our operations. Buddy Ohm is a service that really helps building operators and owners understand how much energy is being used in their building, and when they understand how much energy is being used, they can actually take steps to reduce it. 10 Gigabit Adelaide is really going to help enhance that service for us here, so it really helps us provide a better service to our customers and our staff and our partners around the world.
Well, the Australian Institute of Business is a private higher education provider that offers online education to working adults, particularly around the business and management space, and with a flagship product of an online MBA program. Being in the first business in the first building in the first city in the world to have access to a 10 gigabit fibre optic network is just enormous for us. We pride ourselves on being innovative. We pride ourselves on actually giving these great, immersive, rich experiences to students. And in fact, we can't have a good business without it.
To make the data economy work well, you have to have the right pipes. South Australia's already got Gig City, which is an important thing, but the 10 gigabit City of Adelaide work is very exciting because it means that the connection to the cloud for all of the major industries and private businesses and public businesses in the City of Adelaide will be instantaneous and synchronous. People sending files, people sending scans, health industry communicating with hospitals, to doctors, to small businesses, etc. All of that will be instantaneous. And if it's true, and I believe it is, that data is the new oil, then Adelaide will be able to play an important role in that new industry.
This is all about the innovation story of the City of Adelaide. We want to get right behind the new industries, those knowledge-intensive industries, which are growing. They're growing locally, nationally and globally, and we want to position Adelaide as a leader. 10 Gigabit Adelaide is going to make businesses in the City of Adelaide more competitive. So this infrastructure will enable them to reach local, national and global markets faster, more securely and with greater accuracy. So City Council, in partnership with TPG Telecom, is laying out the infrastructure today to make sure that we underwrite the success and the future of the city tomorrow.
Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great, thank you, Peter. Yesterday we talked about the cone of possibility, that ever-expanding range of possibilities in the adjacent possible. I talked about all the cloud innovation that's happening. You heard examples of telemedicine, real-time data collection, real-time analysis, telepresence, and even augmented teleexistence. The fast network is going to make all these things possible. The fast network here in Australia, your 10 gig network, is going to make all these things possible, not just for big companies, but even for small businesses, startup businesses. It means that people based here in Adelaide will be able to compete at the global scale. So it's thanks to the City of Adelaide and this 10 gig network that cone of possibility is expanding. Now we're going to take a 25-minute break. We'll be back at 11:15, and then we'll continue with our program. We'll start to talk about some of the space-based businesses that are here, right here in Adelaide. Thanks. We'll see you in 25 minutes.